All right, what is going on, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to the KC Sports Report. Michael Darcy, your host here as always, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by my good friend Lucas Murphy. He's a contributor over at Inside the Royals and Blue Wings Rising, both publications of Fan Nation. And today we're going to break down the Kansas City Chiefs 2022 draft class. So ladies and gentlemen, yet another NFL draft is in the books, and your Kansas City Chiefs were very successful. Brett Veach was able to find a lot of great players at positions of need, and they had a lot of ammunition to use in this draft, but I think that they made that count. So, Lucas, before we get into the individual picks, what was your overall thoughts on, leading up into the draft and the needs, and do you think that these needs were filled?
You and I talked multiple times on projections, who we thought would go. I mean, we did over at kcsportsreport.com, multiple mock drafts, and, going into it, we knew that Brett Veach really needed to kind of have a highly graded draft. And we knew that there were needs. I mean, we knew that defensive end was a glaring hole. We knew that cornerback would probably be, I wouldn't say a huge of a hole as defensive end, but it was a need for sure. Now post-draft, Brett Veach nailed that aspect. I mean, he went completely down the line. And I really kind of paid attention to ESPN on some things. So ESPN projects needs. And, they always kind of list out the needs on the overall website and when they're going through the draft. And they said that they needed a wide receiver, they needed a defensive end, they needed a cornerback, they needed a running back, and they needed an inside linebacker. And it was absolutely incredible to see each one of those bubbles turn green as this draft went through. And it just shows you that Brett Veach nailed this draft. And obviously we're going to talk about each player, but from a positional standpoint, he filled the holes that ESPN thought they needed, NFL Network thought they needed, and obviously the Kansas City Chiefs thought they needed. So I'm excited, man. I was extremely, extremely pumped when this thing wrapped up, and it's still kind of settling in. I mean, honestly, it's still kind of just like, did he really just do this? Him and his staff, did they really just accomplish this? So I'm excited to talk about it.
When it wasn't just Chiefs Kingdom that kind of blew what Brett Veach did out of the water, I mean, you can see NFL Network, and PFF gave the Chiefs an A-plus grade, which we'll give our grades in a different video, but I think that just speaks to how well they did in this draft. They addressed all the needs that they needed, and they found these players at great value. So before we get off on a huge tangent, I want to get into the individual players. And the first player the Chiefs drafted was 21st overall in cornerback Trent McDuffie out of Washington. Now, the Chiefs had to trade up 7 spots with the New England Patriots to acquire this pick, which all they had to give up was the 29th overall pick, the 94th overall pick, and the 121st overall draft pick, which we'll talk about it later, but they ended up getting one of those draft picks back. But Trent McDuffie is a baller. Like, I don't think that Brett Veach expected him to fall that far. There's been a lot of people saying that he is a top 2 cornerback in this class, outside of Sauce Gardner and Stingley. But, what he's able to do on the football field is something that I think that Brett Veach really liked, because in college, he had a fantastic college career. He only allowed a 44.4% completion rate, which was first in the Pac-12, and he also just allowed 0.39 yards per coverage snap. So when he's in coverage, he's only going to give up a 0.39 yards per coverage snap, which was also leading in the conference. Now, he is only 5'11". He's a smaller guy. He doesn't have that height that Sauce Gardner does, or the height that some of the other corners had, but he just knows how to play football. Like, he does test very well athletically, which is a metric that we're going to be talking about a lot in this video. He was arguably the best coverage corner in the draft with a 9.49 RAS. And an RAS is a relative athletic score, which is basically what all of these new NFL teams are using to evaluate players. He tested very, very well, and he ran a 4.4 at the combine. So this is a fast, physical corner. I mean, I watched his tape. He flies around the football field, and I think that he is going to be that replacement for Charvarius Ward, and that was really important because coming into this draft, the Chiefs had Rashad Fenton and L'Jarius Sneed, and that was it. So, I think McDuffie was a fantastic pick, and according to PFF, he only allowed 16 catches for 111 yards last season, despite being in coverage nearly 300 snaps. So personally, Lucas, I think this pick was phenomenal. They were able to address a big need, really not giving up that many resources to go up and get him. And overall, I think that this pick was fantastic. What do you think?
A couple things. I think it's ironic that the trade happened with New England. I mean, I know they like to trade and kind of maneuver around, but man, to trade within, the AFC and to really kind of give a powerhouse and even more powerful player, I thought that was pretty interesting. But man, I'm a big fan of this McDuffie, draft pick. I think it's interesting too that he did fall the way he did. I think it just was a natural phenomenon type of thing. I don't really think that there was no reason for him to do that, because even Brett Veach said in his press conference, like, man, we talked to him pre-draft, we talked to him at the combine, but it was just a pick we really didn't think could happen, and it just kind of was gifted to them, at least to where he fell, and they were able to make that trade. I really like his man coverage, and I think that that's going to translate extremely well, because that's obviously what the Chiefs like to do, is a lot of press man coverage. I've seen a lot of comps, and I really like this because obviously I'm a Kansas fan, but he's been compared to Chris Harris Jr., and I think if he can translate to that, I mean, you're going to get a really, really good football player. Like you said, too, he runs very quick. He is a very physical corner. One thing I like to see, too, is that he likes to tackle, and that's the last cornerback that we got from Washington did not like to tackle. So I really
Marcus Peters.
I really like the fact that he tackles, and I think that's something, when we do eventually go through this whole thing, I think you're going to see a lot more physicality. I think you're going to see an attitude with this group. I don't think that they got soft players, if that makes sense, and I think each of them are going to provide an entity that each one can bring to the Kansas City Chiefs that's going to be special, and McDuffie's definitely going to provide, something that we really needed without Ward. And I think over time, I think we'll see that McDuffie turns out to be better than Charvarius Ward, and that's kind of, I think, what they hope for, and that's with obviously letting him go to San Francisco. And so, yeah, I really like this pick a lot, and it kind of caught me off guard just because I think, we didn't anticipate him being there, and there was some other options available, and I'm glad they went with McDuffie there.
And I think that, McDuffie might not have been the pick if the wide receiver boom didn't happen. I think that they were probably looking at a wide receiver, and when you saw like 6 getting drafted back to back to back to back, it was kind of like, the value just isn't there anymore. And trading up for a cornerback in McDuffie, that just seemed reasonable. And I think that, guys, he's so physical and he's so fast. He's going to be a very productive cornerback year one. And that's why he's such a great pick, because you can line him up next year. He can start right away. And I think that when you look at a lot of these picks, they have the same thing in common. They can all start next year in the very first game and in the preseason. So I think that is one of the upsides of McDuffie, but I'm just excited to see what he can do. The next pick was the final pick of the first round for the Kansas City Chiefs. 30th overall, they selected defensive end out of Purdue, George Karlaftis. Now, this is a guy that actually, I didn't know this at the time. Actually, one of the viewers commented on the video previously and said, hey, you guys called this pick. We called George Karlaftis getting picked to the Kansas City Chiefs. And the fact that they didn't have to trade up for him makes this pick better. He was kind of one of the best edge rushers available. I kind of think that they were all in on Karlaftis. I mean, Spags kind of said it in the post. They do that series on YouTube called The Call, where they call the player that got drafted and talk to him. Spags apparently loved George Karlaftis, and I think that he was probably their number one option. And it makes sense. I mean, he's a strong edge. Now, he doesn't have a lot of bend to it, and he does have, I think, shorter arms. But, this pick in my mind compares a lot to Nick Bolton. He didn't test great at the combine, but he just knows how to play football, and he's learning how to get better. Last year he had 54 pressures in college, but he's going to continue to get better because just a couple years ago, he played water polo in Greece. So I think that as he continues to develop and mature into his body, he's going to be a really good defensive end. And again, a guy that can start next year, day one. He's a high motor guy. He's got a really good personality to him, a great character. And I think that the improvement is going to be very pivotal because, he doesn't have the finesse of a defensive end. He's not going to apply a swim move like Frank Clark does or try to bend under somebody. He's going to bull rush you, and he's going to try to use his strength, and he's very strong. He's going to try to use his strength to just beat tackles, and that could be successful, but we're just going to have to find out. So, Lucas, what do you think about George Karlaftis, and how do you think he'll do on the Kansas City Chiefs?
Man, before we made a pick that we're going to talk about a little bit later, this was by far my favorite pick, and it's still probably going to be like my favorite pick. Man, I did write an article on KCSportsReport.com about drafting George Karlaftis and why it would be so significant. I'm a huge Karlaftis fan. I think he provides something that the Chiefs don't have, and that is just an all-out physicality type of defensive end. Like, yeah, he's just overpowering. And the thing is it's nonstop. Like, the motor is just so consistent. That's the thing is, like, he's going to bring it every time. And, like, I'm not comparing him to Tamba Hali, but what I am going to compare him to Tamba Hali is that relentlessness, that motor, that Tamba was always coming off the edge. And that's exactly what Karlaftis is going to be able to do, is just continuously bring that pressure. And you said it right there, the amount of pressures he was able to do, which is something I feel like the Chiefs have lacked for a long time. And, he can play DN, but he's been known to kind of kick in a little bit at times, which just shows his versatility. He does have very strong hands, even though you did say his arms are a little bit shorter.
That's true. He has very strong hands. Yeah,
and he can shed a tackle pretty quick. And I've really studied film on him quite a bit. And he can kind of slim down when he kind of maneuvers in through the holes and stuff too, and I think that's what's unique about him, especially for his size. I mean, he's 6'4", 266, and so yeah, I'm a huge Karlaftis fan. They did compare him to Trey Hendrickson, and we are obviously familiar with Trey Hendrickson from his time at the Saints, and then obviously with him with the Bengals. So I think this was a massive pick, and I really do like what Spag said to him on the phone, like, hey, you were my guy, and we were going to get you no matter what. So I think he's going to fit this scheme very well. And I think, that's the thing, is we're starting to see kind of a youth movement. And I think if you can instill this type of, like, ferociousness into this defense, I think you're going to really kind of see it sway just because of the type of players they're getting in, like Karlaftis and a few of the other guys we're going to be talking about. I think McDuffie kind of provides it too, and that's what's going to be exciting.
My only semi-concern is the pressures are great. 54 pressures is phenomenal, but we got to see it translate into sacks. That was the Chiefs' big problem last year. They could often get to the quarterback, but in that AFC Championship game when they needed to sack Joe Burrow, they could not do that. So I think that Karlaftis is going to have to mature. Obviously, all of these players are going to have to mature. I just think that he is more athletically raw than some of the other guys. Now, that doesn't mean he can't start day one, because I think that he will, but I think that the fact that he does win with brute strength and just kind of uses his very strong hands to bully tackles, that often works in college, but it might not work in the NFL. And I'm not saying that it couldn't work in the NFL, but if you're going to need somebody to be productive day one, having somebody that might be a little bit better athletically would probably be better. But I still think that this was a good pick. They filled a position of need. Karlaftis was one of the better players available. Overall, not many complaints. I'm just more watching this pick and just hoping that he can develop into the guy that we think he can be. The next player, in the second round with the 54th overall pick, the Chiefs selected wide receiver from Western Michigan, Skyy Moore. And the great thing about this pick is the Chiefs traded down 4 spots with New England, acquiring an additional 5th-round draft pick. And I think that, when you look at it, Skyy Moore was a guy that I think the Chiefs had on their board all along. And when they did have that 50th overall pick and George Pickens and Skyy Moore were still on the board, in my mind, I knew that they were going to get at least one of those two players. But when they traded down, something just told me that they did not like George Pickens, and that his off-the-field issues and kind of his troublemaker mentality just wasn't really something that they were into. But the fact that you traded down 4 spots, acquired a 5th-round draft pick, which they used in the 5th round to get a great player, that's a win. Like, the fact that you got Skyy Moore in the 2nd round at all, when you could have probably taken him at the end of the 1st, and I would have been like, okay, they filled that need. But the fact that you waited to the 2nd round, you got an extra 5th-round draft pick, and you got your wide receiver for the future, that's a massive win. And to get into more of Skyy Moore's tape, this is a guy that flies. He ran a 4.41 at the combine. He's 21 years old. He's arguably been called the best slot receiver in the draft, but he has that versatility. He had the biggest hands measured at the combine. He can create separation and get open and make some tough contested catches. Lucas, I think this is a fantastic pick, and the fact that you were able to trade back knowing that you could still get your guy, it's hard to criticize this pick at all.
Yeah, I'm when it came down to, because clearly I think that's the decision, was either Pickens or Skyy Moore. I'm 100% glad they went with Skyy Moore. Again, another write-up that I had on KCSportsReport.com, and it was ironically like 2 weeks right before the draft where I said they need to draft Skyy Moore. So I'm glad that they made this happen, man. I think he fits the Kansas City Chiefs, like a glove, man. He really does. And his ability to kind of just do everything right is what I think fits kind of what Andy Reid likes, and obviously Eric Bieniemy, and like him being able to just come in and I'm sure learn the playbook and go out there and just perform is what they like too. And he can play, like you said, the slot. He can play outside. I've watched his tape too, and his burst off the line is incredible, but his shiftiness and ability to kind of run that route. And, I did a recap of him on KCSportsReport.com and really talked about it. In that, I kind of tagged like all the routes he was able to run while he was there at Western Michigan, and really what he's excelled at. I think for me too, what I like a lot is his physicality. And again, I think that's what this whole draft really kind of was resembled on, is the physicality that each one of these players provides. Like Juju Smith-Schuster is very physical. Now we're seeing Skyy Moore is very physical. We're seeing that translate into running backs. Ronald Jones is a physical running back, and I think that they're just getting to be more aggressive, and like they want players with attitudes, and I think Skyy Moore can provide that. Man, I'm telling you, he's going to be a monster. I think he's going to get a lot of targets probably right away. I really do. I believe that. And I think this group's just going to be kind of versatile anyways. I think you're going to see a lot of guys have games, and it's going to rotate. And I think Skyy Moore is going to be very special.
Do you think that the aspect of coming from a small school could affect Skyy Moore? I personally think that doesn't really matter, but some small school wide receivers just don't translate to the NFL.
I think at times it makes them hungrier. I think it makes them want to be that much more successful. I think when they made the call to him, I don't know if you saw that, they posted it on the Chiefs' Twitter. As soon as he said out loud to his family and friends that he was going to the Chiefs, it absolutely erupted. I think that and then obviously he tweets at Patrick Mahomes, and and they're communicating. I think it just creates an internal fire for success, and I think he'll do really well. I really do.
They comped him to like an Antonio Brown. Now, obviously, we don't know if he's going to be Antonio Brown. The odds are that he probably won't be, but he doesn't have to be Antonio Brown. I'd probably prefer it if he wasn't Antonio Brown. But I think he's going to be a guy that can come in year one and be really productive in this offense. Now, I don't know if I'm going to go as far to say that he's your number one wide receiver right now, because the Chiefs are kind of just going with this wide receiver by committee thing. But this wide receiver core is much better with Skyy Moore, and it's deeper than it was last year. So I'm excited about this pick. I think that he offers a lot. I'm really interested to see if they line him up outside or line him up in the slot. I think he might be a slot receiver to start off with, but you never know. So Skyy Moore was a really good pick in the 2nd round. And with the Chiefs' second round draft pick, they selected safety from Cincinnati, Bryan Cook, 62nd overall. Bryan Cook is a guy that if you just watch his tape, my God, he is a physical player. Like, you can see him hit sticking guys. You can see him put a wide receiver or somebody like a tight end into the seats with how hard that he hits these guys. He's 6'1", 209. My notes say fast and physical in all caps. He is that guy. I mean, if we're ever looking for a Tyrann Mathieu replacement who can just hit really, really hard, Bryan Cook is your guy. I love this pick. I think that, he is a little bit raw. He had some seasons where he wasn't really good and he kind of exploded onto the scene in Cincinnati after he transferred. But, that doesn't really bother me because he has the intangibles and all the athletic matrix to be good in this league. He just wasn't very good for very long. But I think that Bryan Cook is a really good guy to have. He had 93 tackles, 5.5 for loss last year with 2 interceptions and 9 pass breakups. He was first team All-American in the athletic conference this season. So I think Bryan Cook is going to be really, really good. He's one of my favorite draft picks from this draft. Lucas, what are your thoughts on that?
Man, I don't know. Michael, I don't know if you're old enough, and I'm not trying to call you out on that, but do you remember Bernard Pollard?
Yeah.
Holy smokes, man. I think he's going to be a little bit better in coverage, but I think Bryan Cook provides that, physicality of, almost like a knock you out every time type of mentality. Bryan Cook is a thumper, man, and that's what I like in safeties. I really do, and I think that's why the Chiefs kind of wanted him. I mean, if you go look, that's kind of how Reed plays too. And I think, again, you have to emphasize this because even the next couple picks we're going to be talking about, the ferociousness, the aggressiveness, the mentality of I'm just going to, lay you out type of thing. That is what the Chiefs got, and I'm super excited by this. Honestly, man, this pick right here really kind of caught me off guard just because I didn't expect it to happen. And I think it puts in question, too, what they're going to do in the future with Juan Thornhill and some things like that, because I think he truly has the ability to become an NFL starter, and I'm excited to see what he can do for sure. You
kind of read my mind. I think that this pick all but cemented Tyrann Mathieu not coming back. But I also think that this is a Juan Thornhill replacement because he's younger. He offers a lot more athletically than Juan Thornhill does at this point. And I think that, it might take him 5 or 6 weeks to kind of get inclined and get those reps. But Brett Veach said in his press conference he thinks that Bryan Cook can compete right away. And I think that if Bryan Cook sees the field, he's going to be one of those guys that you just fall in love with because of how hard he plays and how fast he is. This is a guy that you can play up in the box. You can move him all over the field. He's great in stopping the run. He really is that Tyrann Mathieu Swiss Army knife hybrid. And I'm so excited about this pick because I think that, like we're going to talk about with all of these draft picks, the new wave of Chiefs football is going to be fast, physical. They are going to be a tough football team, and I'm excited about that. And the next pick, speaking of tough, in the 3rd round with the 103rd overall pick, the Chiefs selected a linebacker from Wisconsin by the name of Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal is a freak of a human being. To say that, I think that's underselling it because to say that he has really good instincts is an understatement, but I'm going to just spit this stat really quickly because I cannot even believe this. He received a 92.2 career PFF grade, which was the highest among linebackers in the draft. All right, that's cool. But even more impressive, he scored a 9.99 on his relative athletic score, which ranked him as the 3rd best athlete at linebacker since 1987.
Yeah.
A perfect score for the relative athletics relative athletic score is a 10. He nearly scored perfectly, and I can't believe it because this is a guy that is a better athlete than Willie Gay. And we're talking about how good Willie Gay is athletically, and Leo Chenal is better. And this is a guy that I think is going to be that Dan Sorensen kind of replacement. Obviously not necessarily the same positions, but just a hard-hitting, tough individual. If you watched any of his games in college, you could just see the lateral speed that he had, the ferocity and the violence that he used when he hit guys. During his press conference, he used the word pain and violence twice. This is a guy that, when he sees the field, he's going to injure some guys because he's just that that physical. And my final thing to say about him is on the side of his arm, often college guys will write something like maybe a Bible verse or something like that. He wrote death row on his arm. So I'm really excited about this pick, Lucas. I don't know about you, but I'm smiling ear to ear right now.
Yeah, man, when I saw this pick happen, man, I honestly kind of had to sit there and just collect my thoughts for a moment, because immediately I thought, holy smokes, they drafted Luke Kuechly in the 3rd round. I mean,
exactly.
That's the type of player you're getting. 6'3", 250 pounds. Like you said, death row on his arm. I mean, we got the Grim Reaper. We got the death row on there. I mean, man, you couldn't ask for more. And I really think that he is going to come in and compete. I really do. I think, man, he has the potential to be very, very special. I mean, he truly does, especially with him lining up next to Nick Bolton. I've heard that he's even going to play the strong side, which is important. Man, I could not be more excited about this. I wrote up Chad Muma from Wyoming. I thought he was a very good player, but man, getting Chenal is 10 times better than that, and I just didn't think that this was a possibility. I really didn't. I think he just brings so much. His lateral side to side is incredible. His downhill to be able to play the run is very good, and his tackling is just top notch. And like you said, he scored a 9.99. I mean, almost basically a perfect score. So we got a very, very good linebacker and an interior linebacker that was much needed anyways. And I kind of wonder if they'll come out and say how surprised they were to even get this pick, because I really think that this is just a home run hit.
Veach had to be falling over in his chair. Like, he is very in tune with the athletic matrix and just how physical and how a player tests, athletically at least. This is a guy that can come in week 1 and be that strong side linebacker. They might say that, oh, he needs some time. No, he doesn't. He's physical. He's fast. If you put him out there, it might be kind of like Willie Gay with his learning curve. Like, all right, he's not great right away, but you can see the talent. You can see the athleticism. And the great thing about this pick is it moves Willie Gay back to weak side linebacker. So he's going to be able to play kind of his natural position while Leo Chenal takes over as a strong side linebacker. And you got Nick Bolton in the middle. I mean, man, this linebacking core is going to be like one of the best in football maybe this year. So yeah. I think this pick was a home run. I mean, do you have anything else to add before we go on to the next one?
I don't, man. I still am in shock and awe with this one, just because I think for me, as they were going, like, obviously we're going to do another video on grades, but as they were going, probably would have graded a little bit lesser. Not like terribly less, but man, once they got this, there was no question I was going to pick my grade. So I'm super pumped with this pick for sure.
It's crazy because my mindset, like the first 2 days of the draft, like once the first night concluded, I was like, oh my gosh, like they had a really good first round. Then the second and third round concluded. And I was like, Veach could basically just go out there and not draft tomorrow, and I would still be happy with his draft class. And he continued to get better. In the 4th round, with the 135th overall pick, the Chiefs selected a cornerback from Fayetteville State by the name of Joshua Williams. Joshua Williams is the first HBCU player drafted since 2020, and this guy is very raw, but he has all the intangibles. He's 6'2", 195, strong hands. He's a hard worker. He earned first-team All-American in his HBCU accolades, and he also got an invitation to the Senior Bowl. So his final 2021 season stat line was like 31 tackles and 3 interceptions alongside 6 pass breakups. But I think what's important to mention here is what he did at Fayetteville State doesn't really matter. Like, he's coming from a smaller school, but, when you're evaluating talent at this next level, it all comes down to the intangibles and kind of what you have to offer and not against the guy that you're going up against. Like, he probably didn't face very good competition, but you could just see right away from, how big he is and how lanky he is and kind of the traits that he has the talent to be a productive corner in this league. So I think that that's important. Don't jump right away and say, oh, he's from Fayetteville State, like he probably played me as a wide receiver. That doesn't really matter. He showcased skills, and I think that, if he comes in and works hard, this could be like a L'Jarius Sneed kind of pick all over again. Like a 4th-round draft pick that, doesn't really have a lot of expectations, but he comes in and is really solid right away.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited about this pick because every team in the division got bigger and more physical at the receiver position. Like you said, he's 6'2", 6'3", 195 pounds. That's a big deal, especially for a corner. Most of the time, your corners aren't going to be that tall. He's very good at press man coverage. Again, that's going to be the theme of these corners that we drafted. They fit right into the scheme that Spags likes to run, is that press man. And I just think that he, again, is going to bring a motivation, an internal fire, because he comes from a smaller school. He's going to be out there to prove himself, to say, look, I've came from here, and this is where I'm at, and this is what I'm doing. And I really like what he brings. I really do. When they drafted him, I obviously had to do research because when I was going through, I wasn't looking at players from Fayetteville State. So when I went through and kind of watched tape on him, yeah, he's going to be a special one. I do think he is a little bit more raw. I think he's going to have to obviously learn. He's going to get some, bumps as the road goes. But I think he's going to learn, and he'll become a very good cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs.
When we're watching training camp this year and during the preseason, he's going to be a guy to look at because he could make tremendous strides during training camp. And I'm not saying that he would be a starter because I think that right now you have so many guys in that room that it's not really realistic to think that he would be a starter. But I could definitely see him being a rotational piece right away. Somebody that could come in and maybe give 10 or 15 snaps in week 5 or 6 and then continue to get bigger and better. I think that he could be like the Rashad Fenton kind of guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably what they'll work him in as. I mean, maybe he comes in and just absolutely balls out, man, and maybe he does earn a spot. But that's what's going to be unique is I think that they're going to have depth at this position that if someone does go down for injury or maybe they're just not playing that well that day, they can rotate guys in and they'll be able to get guys like Joshua Williams in there or, maybe Trent McDuffie's not having a day. Maybe they'll replace him, and that's what's going to be so unique. And they're all versatile. Like they can play inside, they can play slot, they can play outside, they can do what they need to do. And I really like the depth of this cornerback room now.
I do too. Like I think that you got your star corner, star in quotes. You have that guy that could be a star in Trent McDuffie in the first round, and you just added another guy for depth, and they got some more later. But I think that I do think that Joshua Williams could develop into being a very solid player. And, I'll never forget me saying that I thought that L'Jarius Sneed would kind of start as a special teamer. I was very wrong. And so I don't think I'm going to say that about Joshua Williams just because I think that, the Chiefs have shown that if they invest an asset in you, you're probably going to play pretty soon. Like that happened with L'Jarius Sneed. That happened with Mike Hughes. That probably never should have happened with Mike Hughes. But if you invest an asset into a corner, the Chiefs are going to find a way to play you. So I think that is something to look at, but overall, a really good pick for the 4th round. Now, 145th overall in the 5th round, the Chiefs selected an offensive tackle from Kentucky by the name of Darian Kinnard. Kinnard is a big man. He's 6'5", 322, can play both tackle and guard at a high level. The Chiefs traded up from pick 158, or they traded up They traded up from 158 to 145, and they gave up a 7th-round draft pick 233. I believe that was with the Seahawks. But this was a fantastic pick because Kinnard should not have been in the 5th round. And I think that you could kind of see it in his post-draft interview. The dude was just pissed off. Like, he was talking about how he thought that he was going to go in the 2nd, at worst in the 3rd, and he ended up falling to the 5th, and he kind of talked about the Trey Smith story in his post-draft presser and how he's going to come in with that same mentality, and, you could just kind of tell by his facial expressions, he was pissed off, and he looked ready to play football. So, Lucas, what are your thoughts on Darian Kinnard, and do you think that he could potentially be a starting right tackle for the Chiefs this year?
I really do, man. I think when they were doing that, where they do that call in and they kind of show it, man, he was livid. And that's what I think that's what they want. I think they want guys, again, that have attitudes, that are pissed off, that want to play football. And, man, you could see that anyways. I think what I like about him, too, is that he did play right tackle a lot of the time for Kentucky. We know that that's the SEC. That is a very competitive league. A lot of guys get drafted from the SEC, and if he's playing right tackle, Kentucky's kind of a middle-of-the-pack type of team, sometimes a little bit lower, but if you're still starting right tackle, you're doing something right. And for this guy to be 6'5", 322 pounds and have that ability to kind of do that, he's a huge man, massive mauler. I mean, we know that. He's I would say he's probably more of a pass type of blocker, which obviously plays well for the Chiefs. They like to throw the football, and, they have kind of talked like, how would you like to block for Patrick Mahomes? And he seemed pretty excited about that at least. So I'm excited for this pick. I don't, we always like to comp. Anytime like people are like, oh, that's the next Tyreek Hill, and then now it's like, oh, Trey Smith, he got taken in the 5th round. He's going to be, man, let this dude be himself, and that's what's going to be unique is he's going to be a ferocious monster, man. And I think, he's going to come in, and I really do. I think he's going to put a lot of pressure on that starting right tackle position, and he could end up being that starter. Lucas has a long way to go to prove it. I would like to see Kinnard come in and work hard and maybe earn that spot. And if you do, that's a big man over there.
Yeah, I mean, Kinnard has got a lot of the athletic traits that you want. He's got long arms, and he's really, really strong. I question his pass protection. I think that he's going to have to get better. I think he was pretty good in the running game at Kentucky. But, he had a 93.3 career PFF grade, which is the highest among all SEC tackles, which, I mean, the SEC is a really good conference for football, and to be among the top tackles in the conference, I'll take that. And for a 5th-round draft pick, they could have drafted anyone, but they got somebody that has the potential to start week 1. Now, I'm very high on Kinnard. I think that you probably could have taken him in the 4th or maybe even the 3rd, and the pick would have been justified. He fell, and the Chiefs were able to spend a 5th-round draft pick to get a guy that could potentially be a starter. Last year I was talking about how Trey Smith was going to have to kind of see what Kyle Long was going to do in order to win that job. But after you kind of saw Trey Smith like maybe a week at camp, you knew that was Trey Smith's job. I think the same thing is going to be said for Darian Kinnard, because I think that he's hungry, he's motivated, and Lucas Niang hasn't proven anything. And Lucas Niang is going to be out because he tore his ACL in the previous season. So I think Kinnard's going to come out, and I think he's going to win this job.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this pick. I think it's going to bode well for the Chiefs. And here we are thinking like the offensive line is set in stone, and it's one of the strongest points, and then they go out and just absolutely dominate, getting one of the right tackles in the 5th round. I mean, that just shows the ability of what Brett Veach can do, and his team. Honestly, we always give a lot of credit to Brett Veach, but let's be honest, man, he has a huge staff that goes with him, and they probably have already getting ready to get in gear for next year as well, and they just do a phenomenal job. Like, this was a home run pick for me as well. Like, this is what started to put this over the top for the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll talk a little bit more, but the Baltimore Ravens like to hit on draft picks every single year. Like, they do very, very good at drafting. After this, I think you got to start putting the Chiefs up there, man. I mean, the Chiefs are honestly consistently been kind of proven what they can do in the draft, at least the last couple of years, and I'm excited for this pick, no doubt.
I think he's going to be really good. But the next pick, we jump ahead 2 rounds because the Chiefs did not have a 6th-round draft pick. In the 7th round, with the 243rd overall pick, the Chiefs selected a cornerback out of Washington State by the name of Jalen Watson. Watson was a very good athlete. He tested very well. He had a 9.21 RAS, obviously relative athletic score, which is kind of the metric that the Chiefs and most NFL teams use to evaluate talent. And he was ranked as the 159th quarterback out of everyone from 2001 on. So, wait, no, that's wrong. He was ranked as the 159th cornerback out of 2001 from 1987 to 2022, which that stat might or might not make sense. He's a very good athlete, and when you're in the 7th round, you just need great athletes because maybe they can translate, maybe they can't translate, but to take this risk in the 7th round by getting a fantastic athlete who can fly around the field and maybe make the practice squad or maybe special teams, I mean, it was a good pick.
I like the fact, again, he's 6'2", 197 pounds. That's a big corner. Like, most of the time you're going to get your 5'11s, your 6 foot. The last 2 guys outside of Trent McDuffie were above 6 foot, a little bit bigger. I really like this pick. I mean, he does have some raw ability. When he's not beating him with his hands and kind of keeping him in close with his hands, he does get beat often. But that's something that the Chiefs are going to be able to work on him with, and that's, having good veterans around him. I think L'Jarius Sneed's going to be a good help to these guys. I think them coming in and being in an environment that's kind of a winning environment anyways is going to help. And then obviously you're going against some very good receivers, probably the best quarterback in the NFL every day in practice. So that's going to naturally raise your ability to play the game of football. And I do think Jalen Watson can, get good enough to make the squad, but he's got some ways to go. And I think, he could easily be a practice squad candidate, but we'll have to see. Maybe he comes out and is just an absolute stud and performs like never before, because the thing is being drafted to an NFL team, I think, provides an internal fire that most people can't ever say that they've done. Like, I can't say that I've been drafted in the NFL. I don't know what type of, change that would do to me. Like, I'm now playing in the NFL, so maybe it changes him. Maybe he just becomes this all-world, type of cornerback. So we'll just have to see. But I'm excited for the pick. I really am. 6'2", 197. That's a big man, too, for being a corner.
I'm not going to say no to any cornerbacks in the later rounds or anybody like that, because they're freak athletes, and if worse comes to worse, they're a camp body. But I'm not going to complain about extra defensive backs. I'm just not going to do that. Now, the next pick in the 7th round was pick 251, and the Chiefs selected a running back from Rutgers by the name of Isaiah Pacheco. This guy is 5'11", 216, and he's fast as hell. He ran a 4.3 at the combine, and when you look at his Rutgers career, it was incredible. He finished his college career with 2,442. He finished his career ranking 7th in the program history in terms of rushing yards, and he finished his career with a total of 2,442 yards, which I said is 7th in Rutgers history. And he also caught, he had 18 touchdowns, and he caught 47 passes for 239 yards in 1 touchdown. I think that when you look at this guy, worst case scenario, he's a practice squad guy. Best case scenario, he's the next Elijah Mitchell. And Elijah Mitchell, if you guys didn't know, was drafted by the 49ers last year in the later rounds, and he ended up being their starting running back. Now, I don't think that he's going to come in right away and be that, because I think that's highly unrealistic. But when you look at him, he's such a good athlete. He's so quick. If he gets by the initial line of the defense, he's gone. He was the fastest running back at the combine. Like I said, he ran a 4.3. There's a lot to like with Isaiah Pacheco. And I think that, he probably is going to be the 3rd or 4th running back on the roster if he does make the team. But if he gets some reps, I don't know, man. He could be the next surprise in Kansas City. I do believe that.
Yeah, I think, for him, being able to average, just a little over 3.9 yards per carry. He was doing a little bit over almost 2 yards per catch last year. I think, and then obviously you incorporate that speed into this offense. If they had their eye on this guy, at a decent point within kind of studying the draft, it would make sense why we didn't get some of our running backs back. I think that he can fit a role. Obviously he's going to be competing against guys like Gore. I think, as of right now, Clyde and Ronald Jones are basically locked. But yeah, that, Darrell Williams isn't back. And so there's going to be, guys get hurt. We see Clyde get hurt. I think he has a real chance of being a huge factor for this football team, and I think he fits well to the type of offense that we run. He is a little bit thicker, which that's what you want in a running back. I mean, we saw us draft Darwin Thompson in previous years. That obviously didn't pan out. He was a little bit shorter, and I think that.
And Darwin Thompson didn't run a 4.3. Let's make it clear. That's fast.
And I think that that's a big factor too. And I think being able to catch the football and then show that speed, this is a special pick, I think. And you just got to kind of work through some things. There's a reason why he was drafted in the 7th round, and so they'll get through that. And then I do think that this is a big pick, though. Most of the time you don't say 7th round picks are big. I think that he could potentially come out and and do some stuff for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Now, I'm not going to say that he's going to be the starter. I think that's highly unrealistic. But to say that he might make the team and surprise some people in training camp, I think that is a very strong possibility of coming true. Now, my favorite quote that he said in his post-draft presser is, quote, "I'm willing to take another grown man's job," end quote. I think he's going to come with that killer mindset, which is kind of what all these draft picks have in common, and that's the guy that I want on this running back squad. Like, I want somebody that is going to have that just violent attitude and that kill-all mentality, even with your own teammates. Like, he basically said, "I'm going to take your job, Clyde. I'm going to take your job, Ronald Jones." Now, they're still going to have to see if he can do it, but, for a 7th-round draft pick, it's a very low risk, but it has the potential to be a moderately high reward. And in the 7th round, you're basically taking swings at guys, and sometimes it works out, others it doesn't, but I like this pick a lot, and I think that, the Chiefs were going to take a running back in the later rounds, and this is a good guy to have.
One thing we got to remember, too, though, Michael, is that there's a third entity to football, and that's special teams. And maybe he can provide something in special teams as well. With that elite speed, maybe he can be a gunner. Maybe he can return kicks. There's a lot of things that he could potentially provide this football team outside of just being a running back. So I think that's another reason why they probably looked at him and took him, is because, hey, there's another part of football that we may need to fill, and he can fit that spot as well.
When speaking of guys that could fill that extra spot in that role of special teams is the next Chiefs draft pick. In the 7th round, the final draft pick for the Kansas City Chiefs was safety Nazeeh Johnson out of Marshall. Now, this guy, I'm not going to tease it, but I have an interview potentially set up, so we're going to talk to him more about the draft process and all that fun stuff. But this is a guy that has so much speed. He's a quick DB. You can see his play recognition and explosiveness on tape. The change of direction isn't very good right now, but his burst and his speed, it really pops. So I think that this is a fantastic pick in the 7th round. Again, I'm not going to turn down defensive backs in the later rounds, and I think that, for depth and for special teams, it's a really good pick.
I think he's very versatile. He's been able to line up in the nickel. He can play free safety. He's even played a little bit of corner, and I think that shows you, hey, I can come in, and if you want me to play this, I can do that. Whatever you need me to do to make the team, I'll be able to do. And 6'2", 189 pounds. Again, another big DB. They definitely went that route this year, but it makes sense why they're doing that. The division is loaded with very tall, top-end receivers. When they go get Devontae Adams there in Las Vegas, the Broncos have very tall, physical wide receivers, and the same can be said for the Chargers. Obviously, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So they have big physical receivers, and you need DBs that can cover those guys and go up and get it with the best of them. So it makes sense why they're getting these guys, but I really like Johnson as well. I'm excited to see what he has the capabilities of doing. Again, another kind of smaller school in Marshall. Come with that fire, come with that attitude, man. He could definitely bring something.
And that concludes our pick-by-pick breakdown. But, when you look at the overall picture, we're going to grade these picks in a different video because I have a lot to say about that. But, the Chiefs came into the draft with a lot of needs. I think to say that they had a lot of issues would be an understatement because they had a lot of positions that, quite frankly, were depleted because of free agency. And a lot of Chiefs fans were like, oh no, this team is going to be screwed. This team is not going to have any chance at competing within the division or let alone the playoffs and whatnot. But you saw the Chiefs compile the best draft out of any other NFL team. They were able to do this, and right now, they are back in the divisional hunt. I didn't think that they were out of it, but now they are back in that hunt. They're back in the Super Bowl hunt because if half of those guys turn out to be anything and can start day one, this team is going to be good enough to go back to AFC Championship games, to go back to Super Bowls, because that just shows you how good the Chiefs are at drafting, and I think that a lot of these guys are going to be really, really special. Lucas, what do you think about that?
Yeah, man, I think that this was a must-hit draft. Just because they chose to elect to kind of avoid some of those top-end free agent picks this year. And I think that they definitely capitalized on this draft. I think more of these guys will get an opportunity to really contribute and become, big-time players for the Kansas City Chiefs just because that depth is needed. And so they're going to get a lot of opportunities. And, I think at that point you're talking the ball's in their court to perform and become something good, and I think they will. I mean, there's a lot of attitude-filled, physical-type guys that – and again, they're going to change the culture, man. When you bring in a young wave of players and you kind of cohesively put them together with some hungry veterans, that changes a culture, and I think that the Kansas City Chiefs realized that. I mean, I think there was some stagnant kind of environment on that defense. You want a ferocious, just an overly aggressive defense, and I think they're getting that now. And I think Spags is just through the roof. I mean, every time he made a call, man, he was hyped. So I'm super pumped. I'm excited to see these guys already get into camp. That's the thing. As soon as the draft happens, you're like, man, where's camp? Are we almost there? So I'm excited for everything that is going to come here in the near future.
Well, the great thing is that they addressed nearly all defense. They took a couple offensive guys like Skyy Moore and then Darian Kinnard, but now you are in a position where your defense is going to have this influx of new talent coming in, and if they can improve their defense, they're going to be in contention because you got Patrick Mahomes on the other side, and you just gave him a new wide receiver to play with. So I think this draft was fantastic. Again, we're going to hold off on our grades because that's a completely separate video, but I think that when you look at the overall big picture and the significance of this draft, it's hard to say that, on paper, Brett Veach did not nail this. He completely killed this draft, and I had this mentality after the second round. He went on and had a great day 3, got more guys that could be competitive players on this roster, and that's really all you can ask for in day 3. So I think this was a draft for the ages for Chiefs fans, and I'm really excited to see what these guys can do because, this right now is all talk. Once they get on the field and prove what they can do, it's going to make us sound a lot better. So, Lucas, I guess my final question for you is, what is your favorite draft pick? I have a couple in mind, but, if I was to ask you what is your favorite draft pick, what would you say?
Man, originally, just from the day one, I was going to say Karlaftis, man. I was all about George Karlaftis, but then we drafted Leo. Man, that's tough. You got to give me you lay the hard one on me, Michael.
I think you're gonna go with the guy that I want to go with. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I'll go with Karlaftis just because that was my original. I couldn't believe that we got him. I really didn't think he was going to be there. I think defensive end was a huge need for a lot of teams, and I did not believe he was going to be there. And for us to get him and not have to trade up from that pick, is huge. So I'm going to go Karlaftis for sure.
We think alike. I think Leo Chenal was a guy that I already had my favorite pick in mind, and then we drafted Leo Chenal, so I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they were able to get this guy. And I think the mentality that he just has, you can't ask for anything better. I think that death row is going to become the new rent is due kind of thing. I'm so excited for that. But, I'm not going to pick him. I'm going to go with my original decision of Bryan Cook. I think Bryan Cook is so fast and physical. He's going to be a Chiefs favorite. He's going to put Mike Williams in the sidelines or something like that. We're just all going to go crazy. And I think he's going to take over for Juan Thornhill very, very quickly. So those are our thoughts on this draft class. Let us know down in the comments what you guys think of this draft class. Do you like it? Do you hate it? And stick around for the next video, which will be our draft grades. There's a lot of thoughts on that. But, Lucas, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Where can the people find you?
Guys, head over to the Beat Up KC on Twitter. You're going to get literally everything that I'm involved with, whether it's Royals baseball, KU sports, Kansas City Chiefs. Head over there. And then I got to give a plug to kcsportsreport.com. Been kind of writing up each draft pick that we've taken. It's been kind of hard just because we've taken so many this year, but I'm going to keep pumping them out and giving you guys the content on each player. So head over there and check out the most recent ones. Outside of that, man, that's all I got.
Guys, definitely go listen to the Royals Rundown, the podcast. The Royals are very frustrating right now, so I'm very appreciative that the Chiefs are good and give us something to cheer about. But as for me, you can follow me on Twitter. That is at KC Sports Report. Instagram is KC_Sports Report. Obviously, go subscribe to not only this YouTube channel, but go subscribe to the website. All you got to do is put your email in, and the website is kcsportsreport.com. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching this video, and go Chiefs.